We're alive. Hi, everyone.
All right.
Yay!
Yay, it worked.
Awesome. All right. Well, first of all, I think we do have 2 people joining us live, which is lovely. So awesome. So thank you for joining us live. And I apologize we're running a little late, little technical difficulties on my end. But we're going to get started. We have 2 of the fabulous counselors from Franklin Pierce High School in Tacoma. And we're just going to ask them some questions, do a little kind of fun back and forth. And the way this works on Google Hangouts is the way it's supposed to work is when I'm talking, you'll see me on screen. And then when the folks from Franklin Pierce are talking, you'll see them on screen. So welcome. We have 2 folks from Franklin Pierce. So how about if you could just quickly introduce yourself for those watching us live?
All right. Laura Conklin.
Are you going to say anything else?
No, I should. A counselor for 7 years now.
I'm Shauna Jacobs. This is my 4th year of counseling and 4th year at Franklin Pierce High School.
Very good. And I understand one of your team members is not joining us, but we should give a proper shout out. Who else is on your team there at Franklin Pierce High School?
So Jonathan Love, who should be joining us, I would guess maybe 10 minutes from now, I would think. He'll join us.
Very good. All right. We'll welcome him when he gets in. Well, my name is Brian Matheson, and I am with the Washington School Counselors Association. And on behalf of the entire association, we just want to congratulate Franklin Pierce High School. It's a wonderful accomplishment. You're the first school in the state of Washington to earn Recognized ASCA Model Program designation, and we're just all very excited about you. We're celebrating with you, and this is just part of that celebration. So I guess maybe for folks who are joining us and don't know that much about RAMP, maybe we can begin by just tell us in your words, what is a Recognized ASCA Model Program designation?
Okay, well, so RAMP stands for Recognized ASCA Model Program. And so basically what it means is that, our program, the comprehensive program that we have here at FP is in line and has the stamp of approval from the National Association.
Very cool. And I'm curious what inspired you to go after RAMP designation. Give me kind of some background on how you got started and how that all came to be.
Sure. And Shauna can jump in at any time.
I'll let you start us out.
Okay. Well, I started here probably 7 years ago. And came into a district that was really supportive of counseling in general. The whole kind of navigation curriculum started here in this district. So there is a background, and John's coming in. There is a background of really supporting counselors. And so coming in with that kind of environment, I think has been positive for us. And then from there, if you know the history of Franklin Pierce High School, quite a few years ago, we had really pretty poor graduation rates as a district at large. And so we went to Oregon and to Tiger Tualatin as the school. And we brought the response to intervention kind of structure of looking at how successful our students were. We brought it to the district. And we had a really strong principal here. She's at Sela High School now, Jennifer Kindle. Who had very high expectations for us, but also because of I think the district being supportive as counselors and seeing us as leaders anyway, the expectation is that we would play a major role in kind of evaluating how successful we are as a district at large. And so I think that just got us into kind of the mindset of, okay, we're evaluating what teachers are doing and graduation and interventions and all of these things. We need to take a look at, what's the comprehensive program looking like? Are all students at our schools, K-12, are they better because of what we do? And so that kind of started conversations at the district level. We have district standards that are in line with ASCA. We have an evaluation system that's kind of geared towards TPEP, but also towards allowing us to do some reflection and goal setting. And so with all of those things combined, it just kind of allowed us to really kind of look, kind of scope and sequence, big picture of what we were doing. And so, it really probably started, 4 or 5 years ago, We've been talking about ramp, I think, for years and years with our administrators, and then just kind of decided to put all the pieces together in an organized way.
Very cool. So if you can turn your camera just a little angled, get John in there. We got him like halfway.
Come
on,
there he is.
There we go.
Over here.
Hi, John.
He's not that small either. He's just sitting further behind, so I look like I'm
I don't have a
quite
camera
large.
face, so
There we go.
Welcome. All right. So what I'm hearing from you is kind of you had some different pieces in place that laid the groundwork, so to speak. You had some support at the district, support from administration. You got some professional development, and then you had some specific targets that you wanted to get after, and then all that you laid the groundwork, if you will, for ramp. Correct?
Right. Right.
Very good.
Yeah.
Now,
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Is that me going ahead?
Yes.
Okay. I think the other thing that has really helped us with, having an advisory is it's been like this built-in system for us to be able to say, okay, we've looked at this, like all of these standards that we have, all of these things that we think students should learn and get from counselors. We kind of decided, okay, what was developmentally appropriate? What should they be getting in elementary, middle, high school, the whole K-12? And having that built-in structure where really it's like a half an hour every single week where it was counseling curriculum has allowed us to say, okay, anytime we have some sort of action plan, where we have a deficit in a counseling skill for our students, we can plug it into the scope and sequence of advisory. So having that structure in place along with just being always evaluating ourselves, I think has been really helpful.
Very good. So I think I know you're referring to your student advisory, correct? So was that an opportunity for you to get together with your students and drive small groups or large group curriculum? Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, so we have navigation curriculum. It's basically college career readiness curriculum that they start out getting really when they're in kindergarten. So we have our little tiny kindergartners that sit in with their teachers. They do student-led, conferences with their parents, and they specifically talk about who am I academically as a learner. So there's the planner piece, and then there's also the citizenship piece. And so that's like, we're able to address kind of who the whole student is, and they hear that from the time they're in kindergarten all the way through the time that they are seniors in high school. So, we've been able to kind of look at that, I think, as counselors at large and just say, is this system that we've had in place with advisory that's kind of been in our district for a while, is it still meeting the needs of kids, or are there gaps? Those ASCA standards that are now district standards that we've kind of adjusted to meet the needs of our kids, and being able to highlight specific things we're missing, having those two things like a structure in place where the half an hour exists, we can kind of implement the lessons that we need all kids to learn, if that makes sense.
Oh, absolutely. Well, and I think what's really exciting about what you're saying, and hopefully it's inspiring for folks that are listening, is that you are running your program. You have these amazing interventions and pieces in place. And so really for you, RAMP was just pulling it all together and packaging it and moving it forward to your peers as your model program.
Right. Right.
And now I have to say, I've been through this process and I know a little bit about it. There takes a little bit extra crazy to go ahead and put all that together. So where did that come from? Like, what was the inspiration? Like, we want to ramp. You've been talking about with administration for a while. Like, what was the inspiration for wanting to ramp?
Anybody?
Well, I mean, it seemed like it was the next logical step. So like Laura was saying, we had a lot of these things in place already over the last handful of years. And so it was really just a matter of putting the pieces together. We had a lot of the material and the programs and interventions and structure in place. So we just kind of had to format it in a way that aligned with the RAMP rubric and expectations. And so it just kind of made sense. We were close enough to just, put all of that stuff together.
Very cool. So kind of moving forward, so now I am curious about your program. Tell me about your program goals. So what were your program goals for your students that were part of your RAMP application?
So when we, whenever we decide on what our goals are going to be for the school year, we always start off by looking at like basically the student needs, the data from the year before. Some of it has to, some of the goals have to do with, in order for us to advocate for ourselves, we have to be in line with what the district wants and what the building wants. But I feel like we've also been really lucky in this district to have some feedback and kind of be at the leadership tables to help kind of guide that. So our first goal had specifically, there was a specific focus on reducing suspensions. So the goal was that we were going to reduce overall suspensions and office referrals by 20%. And so the reason that we, focused on that and John's kind of over behavior was that, the idea was, academics are impacted by students losing out on class time. It's also impacted by a disconnection between, what's going on in school and what's going on in a student's life. And so there have been some kind of really purposeful connections, building some restorative justice and things like that that have been targeting that specific goal. Do you have anything else as to why we chose that one?
Well, I think it's, we could have gone several different ways. We had 5 years of trend data on behavior. And so there were a lot of factors that we saw that were just components of the structure of the school that were easy for us to look at. When you have teachers coming and going, you have students coming and going, but your behavioral trends stay consistent. That means there's a lot of things that you can do within the structure of your school. And a lot of that just has to do with, how you're educating your students, how often you're coming back to them, what students you're addressing. For example, we knew that we had a higher proportion of boys. So being very intentional on how do you educate boys. And that was a lot of collaboration with the teachers. Some of the other things were, how do we set up our lunch structures? When we had high incidences of suspensions with freshmen, knowing that they were not getting provided any social norming. So having those structures to where we're able to look at it and have those conversations with our admin, and then being supportive and changing those around, significantly drop suspensions in those areas. So I think having done a lot of the work over a period of years and having that data to go through and knowing the structures involved, that made it a very easy one to pick.
Cool.
Yeah, thank you. So that was one of 4. The second one that we did had to do specifically with graduation rates. And so again, I don't know, with 2009, we're at 62%. Obviously, that's incredibly low. When we were first talking about what we could do, a lot of it was, how do we put out all of these fires, right? Like, how do we just get our seniors to graduate? So we had a lot of interventions that we built really quickly to try and triage that. And then when we were done with that year, and we thought we had been fairly successful, we thought, okay, what are some school-wide kinds of supports we can put in place? And that's really where that RTI, and now it's called, multi-tiered systems of support, how can we implement that stuff? So our second goal would be a consistent goal from year to year, but it is that, that we have 90% graduation rates or higher. And we've been able to maintain that for the last few years. And so because we have worked really hard to maintain that, now our third goal is increasing access to dual credit classes for our students. So now the focus can be, college and career readiness. Again, with our advisory curriculum, that's what we talk about with students all the time. We have teachers that deliver a lot of the lessons, but a lot of the lessons are lessons that we collaborate on with teachers, that we collaborate on with people at the district level to make sure that our kids are college career ready. And a piece of that is, okay, these are your interests, these are your strengths. Putting these together, what kind of a career might that align with? What kind of training do you need for that? And then what kinds of classes here at Franklin Pierce High School would support you with that? And so we've seen a dramatic increase with our students that are accessing dual credits. Lots of STEM-related classes, CTE numbers have increased. Our AP numbers are really high, and what's great about that too is they're representative of our demographic. So our lowest demographic of student in relation to our population actually are Caucasian students. We're a little low in that area. So I don't know that we're going to build a big action plan to increase the Caucasians accessing AP, but that's good news for us, because we have students that are going in to post-secondary education, and they're more prepared. So that was our third goal. And then fourth goal?
Yeah, so our fourth goal was surrounding attendance. We've noticed a trend over the last few years that our Hispanic female students are not attending school as much as any other group of students. And so we just wanted to be really intentional about linking them into the building and creating that connection and positive relationships. So whether that was specifically having junior Hispanic female students part of Link Crew to try to connect with the freshmen, incoming freshmen, to try to prevent that trend from continuing year to year, or utilizing various clubs like LEAP or Latino Student Union, different things like that. However, we could intentionally connect with that specific group of students. That was really an important focus for us too.
That's awesome.
So
Now, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I think that with all of those goals, they were all based on the data that we looked at. So the attendance, the discipline data, our graduation rates, dual credit. We were looking at our school at large and then looking at some subgroups, but it was totally based specifically off the needs of our students and our school. So I think that's kind of the way to go, obviously, when you're building your goals, not to just kind of choose ones that seem kind of like a grand scale of what all counselors should do, but have them be specific to your students.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's what I was going to say. It's just amazing listening to all of you talk. I mean, you are where all of us hope to be, which is that place where you've nailed down those SMART goals. You know exactly what you're working on in terms of the students you're targeting for intervention. And I'm just curious, I mean, all of us are trying to get to that beautiful place. Would you attribute that to professional development in your district, or your background training, or just you all as a team? How did you get to that place where all of you are so focused on data and the results, that place that we're all trying to get to?
Can I
Yeah,
start
please
this
do.
one?
Yeah.
So I think that for me, coming into this place directly out of grad school, having no prior experience in a different counseling program, it was really a gift. And I think there were a lot of things that were set up here because of the work that had been done a couple years prior by going to Oregon and seeing what a functioning, productive program and school are supposed to look like. I think that was huge for me, and I think that was more professional development than I could have received in any other arena, because the work was being done. I also just need to really attribute a lot of it to how amazing Laura is as a counselor. I mean, honestly, just because I've never met anybody who is more driven and able to hear something and then put it into practice in a more efficient and effective way. So I think that, yes, we can all day long talk about the structures and our former principal and the district and all these supports, but without her, I mean, would you agree?
Yeah.
Without her leadership and her unique skill set, I don't know if it would have been as doable. I mean, I think we still would have been able to pull it off.
Yeah, you would have been okay.
Other people can do the same thing that our school has done. But I think that she's a very special, unique person. And so I just think that a lot of it has to do with her leadership. A little bit. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Anyways.
Thanks.
That was perfect. Well, actually, I was going to ask the question. I'll bounce around a little bit. Obviously, you're a team. How did you break up the work of moving your program forward and applying for RAMP designation? I already heard that John has a specific area over behavior that caught my attention. I thought that was really interesting. So just tell us maybe a little bit about how you've organized your team for folks who are listening who are in teams, and then how you broke up that RAMP application and those different components and the write-ups.
Well, I think that now I can speak. I think that we are all doers. I think that that's really important. And so I think knowing that we're a team of people that don't just like to kind of, you hear the phrase admiring the problem. it'd be really easy for us to kind of sit around and go on and on about, how unsuccessful or whatever. But, going back to what Shauna said, I think it's important that you are actionable. And so, we're all kind of nerds with data in our own special way. And so we break up a lot of what we do kind of based on kind of strengths. So John is huge with data. He's great at being able to kind of look at trends and look big picture, and then be able to identify when there's a challenge or something wrong. So he really has taken the lead on, office suspensions, referrals to the office. He's done a lot too with a lot of the engagement programs, especially with our freshmen. We have a freshman academy. So he's the counselor that's been kind of the lead in that area. Shauna is great with data. She has really focused on attendance, which is something I think that's the most difficult kind of thing to be able to connect back to student behavior. And yet it's kind of the ultimate in understanding when a student is really disengaged, they don't want to be here. And what we've kind of found is, now that we've kind of created these structures in place for students, when they fail, they automatically do X, Y, Z. We're finding that it's the students that are disengaging and not attending that really are the ones that are not successful. So Shauna she also has a nurturing kind of personality. So she's great at being able to identify what are ways that we can connect students back in. And so a lot of there's 12 different components, which can sound very overwhelming. But the way that we broke it up was kind of in that area. So, small group kinds of lessons. Shauna handled that. John did a lot of the advisory council. He did a lot of with the goal specific to behavior. And these are things that, that we worked on for an entire year. And then it was this fast and furious kind of putting all the pieces together. It's important so that there's not, you don't have one or two counselors that are super overwhelmed. To start off by saying, okay, here's this big, huge process we have to go through, who really should be assigned to different parts, and then trust that individual is going to do that, and then be able to come back and make sure that it all links, because there's definitely here's the mission, here's the vision, here's the goal, and, and on, that all link together. So being on the same page is important.
I want to add to that a little bit, though, because I think you asked two pieces, didn't you? You asked about the work, and then you asked about the submission pieces, right? And both my coworkers, they work ridiculously hard, and a lot of the stuff that we do is already framed in that. The work we do is already framed on that ASCA model. So and we track the data anyway. So really having the work to put in for that ramp submission, a lot of that information was there. But I can tell you, Laura wears this department with a weight that you probably won't find very many people that they will. So there's no way that we're allowed to fail. So a lot of that, though, even though we had these components, she would oversee that, make sure the work that it needed to get done and got submitted. So as we work through that process of actually submitting the work, she is the oversight to make sure that it gets done the right way, the way that it's, to make sure that it's articulated. So she may come and ask us, how these pieces fit in with what the ramp application was asking, because we do the work. But she really is the person that holds all of that together to make sure that the credit for doing the work was received. So I would really have to give her all the credit for that happening.
So Laura should travel around to every school and help them do their ramp. It's really the moral of the story.
I think a lot of it, though, if you have counselors that are doing their national boards, that process of going, of really evaluating who you are as a counselor and tying it all back to to why you do it, that was a huge, I think, paradigm shift for me, because I always thought that I did what I was supposed to do, but when you really have to think, okay, well, what counseling theory are you using? Oh, well, why did you identify this specific group over other groups you could have run? That process of, professional development and going through national boards also kind of lended itself to being able to say, okay, here's this ramp application, and really making sure that you're addressing what they're asking. That was a big help.
So, well, there's so many great things in what you're saying, but one thing I'm hearing, it's a theme, is that if you're following the ASCA national model and you're using data and being intentional in your work, and you just move forward, then eventually that all comes together, and you're pushing forward a ramp application. So that's just great to hear for those that are listening. I do want to ask. So we have the mindsets and behaviors. Those are still relatively new for some folks. And if I recall correctly, your ramp submission was the first that actually used the new mindsets and behaviors. So could you tell us a little bit about what it was like working with the new mindsets and behaviors, and how you negotiated that?
Yeah, so a lot of the components of, the mindset and the specific behaviors that support really growth mindset in general, a lot of that has been kind of incorporated in our district standards. I talked about the fact that our navigation portfolio has specific information that has to do with learner, planner, citizen. So it addresses students as a whole person. And so using that as a framework in addition to the ASCA standards, even before the mindsets and behaviors were released, was helpful for us because it allowed us to think of students, who are they, as learners, are they attributing, that the success that they have based off of, a perceived level of work, as opposed to being characterized by something specific. And so a lot of those standards were kind of already embedded in that. We do a lot of work, if you look at like the behaviors, there's kind of learning strategies and self-management and all of those pieces. And I think that some of those components have already existed, and having the structured advisory period has allowed us to go back now and add a lot of those pieces. In the last couple years, we went back to the district and said, the behaviors and mindsets that ASCA has now given us, and we've made some adjustments to some of the things that we do. Now we also, we have lessons that have specific information on how to be a positive advocate for yourself. So we have things like that. We've done more work with students being able to reflect upon who they are as learners, and really be able to think about what strengths do I have, and thinking of weaknesses as just a starting point. And so we've been really, really intentional in helping students understand that who they are once they graduate from high school is a process of kind of evolving and understanding who you are, and that it will never stop. And so that's kind of where we've been with that specific piece with ASCA. It's kind of a refreshing addition, to be honest with you.
Very cool. So we've heard a lot of amazing things. We're going to hear more amazing things. I want to hear what was really hard about the ramp application. Were there components or parts of the process that you struggled with as you went along your journey?
We can't hear you. Can you hear us?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, you're back. All right. Struggles, guys.
I mean, I think that it's an overwhelming thing to even contemplate doing, because it is huge. Like Laura's saying, there's 12 components, and it just can seem insurmountable with all of the other work we have to do. And, we've wanted to ramp for the last few years, but then it just never ended up happening because it would be pushed, and we had other priorities. So I think that just getting started was really our most difficult part, to get out of the building, be able to focus on how to plan it out, how to strategize, how to split it apart, and just get started. I think for me personally, that was a hurdle to get over. But
I would add on to that, after you get started, making time in your schedule, because none of your time is protected. So you may think you're going to get to do something during that day, and then something happens and you don't. And deadlines. That's the other stressful part, Laura be coming over asking me if I'm done typing something up, and I'm like, well, I meant to, you mean to get to it when you're supposed to get to it, and then that doesn't always happen. So I think those three things really, right? Getting started, and then
consistently working on it, and not procrastinating, I think.
I think too, knowing all the components, and like John said, creating deadlines for yourself is really huge. We realized really late that we needed to make sure that we had a couple signatures that everyone knew and everybody was on board, but we didn't have the signatures. And so it was this kind of mad scramble, but the district was great and supported us so that we could submit. But just things like that, because it's, there's a lot of kind of specific criteria that they ask for. And so making sure that you're answering those questions really specifically, and then making sure that you give yourself enough time is really important. So.
Very cool. Yeah, great things for people to think about. Like you said, making time to make it a priority, setting deadlines. So I'm geeking out over this. This is just so exciting, and just listening to you is so exciting. I want to know how is your school community reacting from a building level to a district level, principal level? What are you hearing in your community, or is it still pretty quiet until after the ceremony?
Go ahead. Did you have?
Well, we have a new principal this year. And so I know our administrators who've recently left us are very excited about it, because they were so supportive in all the work that we put in. And so they know everything we've done over the last couple of years. I know our district administrators are very excited about it, because they've also been very supportive with that. And they know what kind of work we do in those areas district-wide. And so where I think it comes to all of our colleagues and peers in our district, I think they're excited for two reasons. One, they know how hard we work, but they also know their work is not all that dissimilar. And so I think that the excitement of them actually doing their ramp paperwork seems less overwhelming than it could have, now that they've seen, we go to the same district council meeting. So I think they're excited for a number of different reasons.
Mm-hmm. Well, and now you made me curious. So within your district, do you have a number of folks that are working toward or working on ramp?
I know that our middle school feeder, Ford Middle School, I think that, they have a really strong program, and they're having conversations with us about, kind of supporting them through that. The thing that I think has been really cool is, OSPI sent out that email, and we got a ton of emails from counselors really kind of across the state, who are kind of in various kind of places as far as ramp goes. Or, we've been kind of lucky. We've been able to present at a couple, like WSCA and a couple different places. And so there are people like counseling departments that have come and visited our counseling department, just kind of asking us what we do. Danny's Alkelson has done a really good job of kind of connecting some schools with us. And so it's kind of been this kind of great community of positivity that we've received from them. I even got an email from a counselor, maybe one of the first elementary school counselors in the state, but she was just talking about how she's in her 90s, and she's like always a counselor, once a counselor, also always a counselor. And she was kind of, I wish I remembered her name, but she was just like so excited, because she had been one of the people that had really started a movement of adding elementary and the value of counseling in buildings. And she's still performing on the comedy stage and stuff like that. It was just like this really cool interaction. So, I think through all of this, I know all of us, we're excited to be counselors in general. We are so excited and passionate about what we do. I think sometimes we're a little overwhelming to others.
Well, and I think along with that, we're really passionate about advocacy for the profession and moving forward and not being complacent and using the data and justifying our positions in buildings and what we can do for kids school-wide, as opposed to just purely being responsive when crises occur on an individual student basis. So right. I think that it has been a really cool platform just to show what is possible, and that you can, no matter what demographic of students you're working with or what your caseload looks like, you can put together a comprehensive program, and it's possible, and you just have to fight for it, and you have to try, like John said, fight to protect the time it takes, because we know it's the right thing for kids, and there's a reason why it is so much work, because it's worth it. And so I just think this has been a really powerful advocacy tool for the profession in general.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Well, and that would be a really great closer, but I do have about 2 or 3 more questions, and this is an important one because all of you have talked about your students and your passion for your students. That's really coming through. But I do want to ask you, so you talked about your goals. You worked really hard all year to run your program. Tell us about some of your results with your students. Tell us about some of the changes that you've seen for your building based on running your program.
Yeah, I mean, so I think as a building, we, like, anybody else want to chime in? I'm sorry.
That's a good question.
One of the things that we do at the end of every year is we have like a data results kind of page where we evaluate, where our students left off as far as, overall, passing, failure rate, things like that. Overall, what was our suspension data, our attendance, things like that. We also kind of in that, and it's one of the pieces that we submitted, was we evaluate a lot of the programs and the interventions that we run. We have to kind of identify whether those programs were successful or whether they were not successful and why that was. And I think the piece that we're always very okay with is being able to scrap things that don't work. And so, looking at data, for instance, one example would be, we have had something called the 9th grade success. We based that intervention, it was solely based off of supporting 9th grade students and assisting them with passing classes. When I was looking at the data from 2008, it was over 50% of our students were failing either math or science in the freshman year. And you can imagine what that leads to, because those are core classes. And other classes build upon them, and so there's some disengagement, and then that obviously leads to low graduation rates. And so we built an intervention that addressed those specific needs. Students in the 9th grade flagged for failing math or science would go into this specific intervention. And we ran it for years and years and thought we were so great, and our graduations were so great. And then, we took some time to really evaluate that, and what we're finding is we had some students that were showing up that weren't even failing, and some that it was not systematic. And then a lot of our teachers, we asked our teachers, and what we were finding from them is, they were kind of reluctant to release those students from class. It was basically an intervention where students would lose lunch, but they would also lose a portion of their 3rd period class. Well, when you're failing classes and then you miss out on class, you're missing out on instructional time. And so one of the pieces we did this year is we had totally adjusted that. Now it's just learning. Now we've even changed it so that we have learning lab in our building. The students, instead of missing lunch, they are assigned a specific learning lab with a teacher in that content area because we want to address the specific skill. So that would be an example of a lack of success and then a success now, because we're now exiting students from those classes. They are more successful in math and science. I think at semester we had maybe 4% of our students that were failing classes who ended up failing classes. From 9th grade through 12th grade. A lot of that has to do with looking at interventions and saying, hey, are they really meeting the needs of students, or is it just there because it feels good? So that's one example of an intervention that has been effective, with the goal of specifically linking in our Hispanic females. We have an over-representation of Hispanic females that are link crew mentors. So we have a lot of students, specifically female Hispanic students, who want to be mentors. They want to be a part of something positive. We recently had an interview by the News Tribune, and they came in just to kind of focus on our student-led conferences. And one of the students that was interviewed was in Link Crew, Melissa Escobedo, an amazing student who's in such a huge leadership position now for us, for Link Crew, and also for some other leadership with the Latina Club.
Yeah.
And she's just one of many students. And so I think, the intentional focus with linking specific groups of students up, the intentional focus of evaluating how effective our interventions are, has really led to us having this unceasing amount of focus as far as being data driven. Is that overwhelming?
No,
Sorry.
I'm going to add to the overwhelming part. I just want to talk briefly about one of the programs that I get to run. That is obviously, it's not one of my favorites, so I'll just lead with that. But it's one of the things that really do help our students in that senior success. And so we do a study hall every Wednesday for seniors that aren't passing their classes that they need for graduation. And I think it's important when you run your interventions to always keep in mind what your end goal is. And you always have data in the meantime that you're looking at also. So we're looking at the population, the number of students who are attending that intervention. But the goal at the end is for every student who can graduate to graduate. And so as we go through the years, there's times where those numbers really drop and they're really frustrating, especially if you have standards-based grading. They can be failing a class one week and then passing it the next. And so, we'll go through numbers of 150 students, and sometimes it just seems like you ask yourself why you do it. But, every year that we've run that, one of the things that is not a statistic on that intervention is our principals can ask us the name of any senior and where they are in relation to graduation. And because we're touching bases with that population every single week, having those conversations with them, why they're not passing, what they need to do. Like, we're familiar with our caseload even better because we have that intervention. And then at the end, you're still looking at that end goal, which was not how many showed up per week, but how many graduated on time. And that's one of the biggest contributors to that, is knowing your students and them being aware that we're always following them, always wanting them to be successful.
Amazing. Awesome stuff. All right. I just have one more question. The national conference is coming up. Are you all going to make it to the national conference, or some of you? Tell us about that.
Yeah, well, we're crazy and we submitted a proposal. So we're presenting at ASCA this year as a group. So all three of us get to go, and then we'll all get to go and get the RAMP award as well. So we're excited about that.
Yay. And what are you presenting on?
The use of data. So shocking, right?
Shocking.
Using data to be able to implement college career readiness. So
Awesome.
right up our alley. Yeah, we're excited about it.
That's awesome. And for those that don't know, where is it at?
New Orleans.
It is. So I hope you have a fabulous time.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Well, with that, we've taken enough of your valuable time. I just want to, on behalf of myself and the Washington School Councils Association, all our members, just congratulate you. You're an inspiration. You're doing amazing things for your students. And we hope that school counselors out there will be inspired to keep running great programs and keep working on RAMP designation. So thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you so much.
All right. Bye.
Bye.